Support comes from Missouri Forest Products Association, committed to sustainable and sound conservation of the state's forests, which support more than 41,000 Missouri jobs, resulting in a $10 billion industry. ChooseWood.com.
From St. Louis Public Radio. This is St. Louis on the Air.
Actually, it's not because they want to make more money. It's because they don't feel recognized.
You could sort by region. You could choose Dallas. You want to look at what's happening in Silicon Valley and sort and see which companies from each of those major metro areas had made it. St. Louis wasn't even one of the choices.
Yes.
And that kind of broke my heart a bit.
It did. We need to find something that I think there's some work to do.
Something that kind of defines us.
That kind of defines us.
I'm Sarah Fensky. Maplewood-based Engagedly is one of the fastest-growing private companies in the U.S. Don't take my word for that. The company was recently listed on the Inc. 5000, which tracks growth in privately held companies. It credits Engagedly with 577% growth over the past 3 years. That's enough to earn the company a spot in the top 1,000 of Inc.'s list. It's one of just 5 St. Louis area companies notching such honors. So what does Engagedly do, and what's driving that growth? Joining us today with the answers is its co-founder and president, that is Shri Chellappa. So Shri, welcome.
Oh, thank you, Sarah. It's a pleasure to be here.
So your company offers, quote, a people-centric talent management platform. What is that?
All right. So if you look at how organizations run their businesses, their focus typically is growing their top line, reducing costs, expansion, all of that stuff, right? I mean, a lot of companies talk about, we are people friendly, we care about our employees. And that's true for most part, especially these days, it's more true than it's ever been before. What we have seen, however, in the last, few decades of technology being used to run organizations is that the people-oriented part of the software that's run for internal people management have been very much driven by what I would say top-down, more organizational process, compliance, check the box type of stuff. And what Engagedly is doing is to build a software that people actually want to use. They actually want to be part of the organization, and there's a collective, investment and both from the employees and the organizations in their people processes. So it's very people-centric approach to software rather than more compliance-oriented approach to HR systems.
So I'm thinking about what I have to use for our HR systems in my job, and I just consider that something I want to get done as fast as possible so I can get back to the part of the job that interests me. How are you making this something that is pleasant for people, or maybe even goes beyond that and is a part of something they enjoy?
Yeah, so if you look at, especially as you phrased the question there, as a leader, you want a software that you can use to manage your people. But as a leader, you should be also asking the question, what is software my people want to use for their own success at the organization, for their own fulfilling career they want within the organization, so they can feel more connected within the organization. If you actually think about how much time you actually spend with our coworkers and at work, you probably spend more time with them than with your spouse or with your kids. Many people do. And so why not make that a more fulfilling part of your life and not just look at that as work and I just need to get my work done and go home. So that's the way we want to look at, software for people.
So how can a software do that?
Well, 2 things, right? If you look at how where employees are most engaged and fulfilled is where they have connections at work, right? Especially in a remote work environment, it's even harder to do so. So software with social constructs can really help do that. The other part where people complain and leave actually is not because they want to make more money. It's because they don't feel recognized. They don't feel appreciated. Some managers are good at doing that. Most are not. A software can help you with those tools to be able to give somebody a praise, give somebody a thumbs up, give somebody a recognition badge, things of this nature to really appreciate the work they do. So if you build intelligent software that really promotes those behaviors, And I can talk more about how we can actually make that more fun by gamifying it. We give points, and we have leaderboards and things like that. So it makes it even more fun to actually not only receive the depreciation, but actually even give it.
So you're clearly onto something here. I mean, you have seen huge growth in the past 3 years. Is there a big increase in businesses wanting this sort of thing, or just in terms of businesses hiring you and your company to do it?
Well, it's so we provide a platform. I think the big thing that has changed in the last 4 or 5 years is a more people-centric approach within the organization. Organizations are really suffering from a shortage of talent. I mean, we obviously see a huge backlog of jobless claims and unemployment. But if you actually look behind the data, the problem is not that it's not enough people. The problem is there's not enough of the skills they need in the market today. Mm-hmm. So they have to do two things. One, retain the people they already have and get the skills they want to grow and just sustain their businesses. And you cannot necessarily do that by always hiring new people because they don't have those skills either. Mm-hmm. So what the software like ours can do is to help a complete skill development program that makes it more fun and fulfilling and and give people more careers for upward and, longitudinal mobility within the organizations.
And you're talking about maybe people being remote from their coworkers. Has the pandemic also created some opportunity here, this move to people having to work in teams with people that aren't in the same room with them?
Absolutely. If you think about it, a lot of organizations would say, hey, we need to achieve these things. And they'll go to a whiteboard and they'll write a big whiteboard in their room. And then the whiteboard stays there and, you don't erase it for months. You can't do that anymore. Mm-hmm. You can't just put sticky notes anywhere. Now a need for a software to actually manage that and track that is becoming even more imperative to do that, especially if you're remote. And the advantage of doing that is that the whiteboard is in your room. The software is on the cloud. So when you build your tools and your goals, for example, one of the things we have in our software is you set goals as an organization. Those goals are transparent to the entire organization. Mm-hmm. It is not a secret. At least that's the culture we want to promote with our clients. Your goals as an organization, your goals as a manager are not a secret. They need to be transparent to the employees, and then consequently, the employees then can set their own goals and they can track progress, and you can see the entire ecosystem of your organization in on the move, essentially.
So Engagedly started at the T-Rex incubator downtown. A lot of startups have started there, but you guys have now spread your wings. You're off in a place of your own in Maplewood.
Yes.
How essential was being there in T-Rex as you guys were getting going?
T-Rex was a great help. First of all, it's extremely affordable. And second, there's lots of startups. It's a good ecosystem to be around. The people there are extremely supportive of the startups. And that was one of the reasons we got there. And the thing about T-Rex is you can, start with the one room and then you can get another office. And eventually, we got where we had 5 offices and not every office was adjacent to each other. And at this point, we decided, okay, it's probably time to get our own office. And that's their model. Their model is to incubate and help startups, and then so that they can graduate, essentially.
So why Maplewood?
Well, that was completely opportunistic. So one of the things about my background is I'm also a filmmaker. I've produced or directed or written like 5 feature films. And then one of my first feature films that we shot in downtown called Ghost Image, which I co-wrote and produced, that was actually finished at the studio called Smithley Productions, which is the second oldest recording studio in St. Louis, actually. It's been in operation for over 40 years. Anyway, through the grapevine, I found out that the owners were looking to retire and sell the building, and I had the opportunity and the resources. It's just fortuitous that I was able to do so. I contacted them, and then I decided to buy that building. It served 2 purposes. One, I have a passion for music and movies, so the recording studio was a good addition for that. But it had 2 additional floors that were completely empty, so I figured it would be a good way to move our technology company down there as well.
And so, you're moving your technology company to Maplewood, or you have moved. But on top of that, you intend to keep this production studio open. You're now working with musicians.
I am, yeah. So, we have a good team there. I can't say I'm a good sound engineer or anything. In fact, I'm not a sound engineer at all. But one of the things, I started playing music too. So we have a band called Manchester Underground. Hopefully you'll get to hear that someday soon. But and that was my love for music, is to play music, and we played a few live shows. But this afforded me the ability to stay connected with the music scene. So it was not just going to be a passing fad. And one of the things we did as we got the studio, it's now called Kalinga Production Studios, and is to support local musicians. There's so many good local bands. It's actually mind-boggling how many of them are out there, and they don't get the same level of support and growth opportunities like a band that would be in, let's say, Atlanta or Nashville or LA or some other places. And I hope to be that place where we can give a lot of these local bands a good start, a good recording at a reasonable cost with the good infrastructure that we have in place.
So as you mentioned, you've been so involved with film and have had some success in writing and directing and producing. Why move towards music? Do you see continuing to be active with both music and film, or is music really where you're going to put that artistic passion?
Well, let me just say that I love movies. I've been making movies for close to 20 years now, or maybe 17 years, something like that. Now, one thing about movies is, it takes a lot of money, and it takes a lot of time and a lot of people. When you're running a startup, you don't have either of those three for the most part, because all of those are dedicated to the startup. But when music is something that I've always wanted to play and learn, and I actually decided to start taking lessons about 3-4 years ago, and then I started playing music. And it's something that you can do on the side, without having to compromise the focus I need to have to make Engagedly successful. It's also a good way to, let your emotions flow and give you that fresh, perspective in life, where you're not just constantly working like Elon Musk does, So
you want a side project, and music makes more sense as a side project for where you are right now.
Correct. It does. And it's also something new, right? It's not the same. And I like to explore new things, and this is one of the things that I feel like I want to explore right now.
So hearing about your background and just all these interests you have, I'm curious how you ended up in St. Louis. You're originally from New Delhi.
Correct. Yeah.
So what brought you to the U.S.?
Well, I was born and raised in New Delhi. I did my undergrad in engineering there. And then after that, I came to Memphis to do my master's in biomedical engineering, actually. I actually had a research fellowship at St. Jude Research Hospital. So my path was going to be a researcher in medical research, in the technology side of medical research, not the biological side of medical research. And I decided that I really have this personality where I want to go and do things and be out there.
You didn't want to be stuck in a lab.
I didn't want to be stuck in a lab writing algorithms, to be honest, right? So I gave up my fellowship, which, didn't go well with many people at the university. And then I switched major to business. So I ended up graduating with an MBA in international business and finance, and ended up going back to technology. But the long story short, I worked for FedEx for a couple of years, which is headquartered in Memphis in their technology division. And I realized I really like to go out and travel and do things. And I ended up actually working for a management consulting firm called EY, Ernst & Young, which is, global. And they moved me to St. Louis, basically said St. Louis is our regional headquarters in this area. And that's basically what brought me to St. Louis. I ended up staying here. Been here for 20-some years now.
And so now that you're in this startup space where you have a company of your own and this company's kind of taking off, is St. Louis a good place for that?
St. Louis is a great place for that, actually. There are some drawbacks to being St. Louis. But overall, St. Louis is very affordable. There's plenty of talent here. And the local ecosystem is thriving. It's doing really well. I mean, if you look at the stories, a lot of startups raising, gobs of capital. I would say in the earlier parts, the last 4 or 5 years, it was maybe a little bit harder to raise capital, but now everybody's going remote. So it doesn't really matter where you are.
You can get that investing
you can
even
get investment
being here.
Even being here. At this point, it doesn't matter where you are to raise capital if you are a successful company. Now, if you're an early stage company and you don't have those relationships because you can't go and meet and greet and have coffee and drinks with the investors, which you can do if you're in Silicon Valley or Austin or some of the other places like that, would have been easier. But once you're past a certain stage, it really doesn't matter where you are. And I like St. Louis. It's easy to get around. I hated traffic growing up in Delhi. Every time I go to LA or New York or Atlanta, I'm like, I'm glad I don't live here.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, and I'm glad we have you here. You know, when I was looking at that Inc. 5000 list, where Engagedly was there in that top 1,000, you could sort by region. You know, you could choose Dallas. You want to look at what's happening in Silicon Valley and sort and see which companies from each of those major metro areas had made it. St. Louis wasn't even one of the choices.
Yes.
And that kind of broke my heart a bit.
It did, yeah.
You know, we talk a lot about St. Louis's startup culture here and that there seem to be some exciting things happening. And I don't want to call out that list. It just made me wonder, are we just thinking that things are really taking off here and we're not keeping pace with some of our peer cities?
You know, it's a good question. I've spent a considerable amount of time in Nashville because my last startup that I worked on, which also made Inc. 5000. So this is my second time actually. But that one, I was not the founder. I was one of the initial partners. And we did really well in Nashville. And that company is doing extremely well. They're well on their way to becoming a $1 billion entity now. And Nashville has a really good ecosystems because of one thing. They have a strong industry footprint in healthcare. So there's a ton of healthcare companies there, healthcare startups, and healthcare capital that invest in healthcare.
And isn't that also the case in St. Louis? I guess not to the extent.
Not to the extent. You can't say St. Louis is this industry. You can't.
Yeah.
Because we had a lot of manufacturing at one point, and that obviously is not true anymore. Healthcare is somewhat there, but I don't think it's anything meaningful compared to a city like, even New York but here's an example. Nashville-based, this is a fact. I'm not trying to tout Nashville here.
Sure.
But Nashville-based healthcare companies own 40% of the hospitals in the country. Or some to that number.
Yeah.
Don't quote me on that, but it's in that number. And because of that, they have other ancillary industries, companies that sprout out from that. Technology companies, other healthcare providers, staffing companies, all that stuff that comes out of that. So when you have a strong ecosystem like that, it promotes that industry. Now, St. Louis is very diverse, which is good, because if one industry craters, another industry can catch the break. But I believe, we need to find something that I think there's some work to do.
Something that kind of defines us.
That kind of defines us. Like music defines Nashville, for example. They have two industries, music and healthcare in ways. Austin, which was more of music to some extent, and now it's becoming a hot tech scene.
Yeah.
I think we
need a little more specialization.
We need more. I believe we need a little bit more specialization, and I think biotech is turning out to be one. I actually do think that's quite promising, because we see a lot of biotech companies doing well lately, and that might be it. Who knows?
So that gives you some hope. I mean, it sounds like you're happy to be here, and if more people felt the way that you feel, things could take off.
Yes, that's the hope. That's the hope.
Well, we're all rooting for you, and we'd all love to see that here in St. Louis. So, Shri Chellappa, I want to thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Sarah. It's been a pleasure. I'm a big fan.
Thank you. St. Louis on the Air is a production of St. Louis Public Radio. Understanding starts here. If you learned something new from today's episode, consider leaving us a review and rating on Apple Podcasts on the App Store. It's the easiest way to help people discover our show. We appreciate it. Thank you. St. Louis Public Radio is a member-supported service of the University of Missouri, St. Louis.
Support comes from Missouri Forest Products Association, committed to sustainable and sound conservation of the state's forests, which support more than 41,000 Missouri jobs, resulting in a $10 billion industry. ChooseWood.com.